Welcome to It's Not Really About Dance, a podcast on all the things we're learning about raising healthy, happy, and wholesome kids and teenagers in today's world through the context of competitive dance. I'm Beth.
And I'm Sarah, and we believe that competitive kids activities are about way more than performance or awards. They're about teaching resilience, humility, confidence, and heart. Each episode will use the context of dance to dive into real talk, practical tips, and stories to inspire you to parent with purpose. Hello, and welcome back to It's Not Really About Dance. Beth, it's good to be here with you today. How's it going?
Pretty good, sinking into the fall life and everything that we have going on. How's it going for you?
Just busy. We're taking it one day at a time. All the nutcracker practices and still working through a little bit of an injury with my oldest one. So navigating all that, but otherwise pretty good. So today in our episode, we're going to be talking about how to choose a dance studio or a team and the things that matter to your family and making sure that that is a good fit for you. We have a lot of things that maybe we wish we'd thought through before we had picked, or just some wisdom and things we've picked up along the way that hopefully help make that decision a little bit easier for you. So, disclaimer, we are not here to just sing the praises and toot the horn of our current studio, but we're hoping to zoom out a little bit more in this topic and give some perspective on knowing when that team or studio is the right fit for your family.
And not that we don't love our studio.
We do love our studio.
We do.
Absolutely. We've just learned a lot since our kids were itty bitty and we were diving into this.
Yes. So even within our context, which we've talked about previously in kind of a medium-sized area that we live in, not small town, not giant city, there are at least 6 different dance studios that have competitive teams. So that's not even every single studio. And every one of them is a different size and has kind of a different culture and different things that they value. And so if you are choosing a team, and we're going to talk for the purposes of this, we're going to talk about choosing dance studios because that's what we know, but there's probably a version of this in whatever context you're working with and choosing teams. So why don't we talk about a little bit for dance studios? What are some differences that you would see across the board that you would be kind of like choosing between? If even like think about our area where we live and what we see as differences.
Yeah, I think one of the most surface level things that it's easy to tell the difference in different studios are what are they offering, like styles of dance. Some studios are a lot more ballet focused. Maybe not in our area, but I know in some bigger cities nearby, there are some dance studios that are just ballet schools, and they may sometimes layer in other types of dance, but ballet is the primary focus. Some studios offer tap or acro, and some don't offer those, or maybe they only offer them for the little bitties, and then they don't have a more advanced level of that for older dancers.
Or the reverse. Maybe you have to wait till you're older to do certain styles.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of that depends probably on the style of the studio, but some even offer dance focused around a specific culture, if there's like a cultural type dance. So that's kind of a real surface level. It's easy for you to know upfront, even maybe by just visiting their social media page, like what type of style of dance are they focusing on?
Sure, mostly on their website, you can find what their offerings are.
Or even their class schedules. A lot of studios post class schedules too.
That's true, yes. And we've seen like another layer of that though. So if you're thinking about the idea of maybe eventually being at a competitive level, we've seen even if you go to dance competitions, probably the most prevalent genres that are competed are jazz and the lyrical contemporary, whatever version of that, depending on age and music choice. But those kind of blend and blur a little bit. So jazz and then lyrical contemporary tend to be the most prevalent. But even within that, different studios have a different take on that.
Definitely. It's like the choreographer puts their own flavor and spin on things.
Absolutely. And now I will say the larger the studio you're at, typically the more wide range of offerings you're going to have across that spectrum. So, for example, we're at a fairly large studio. And so our students take hip hop as well as a very classical style of ballet. I mean, you have that whole spectrum. Whereas some studios in our area are going to skew much more to the jazz hip hop world, with ballet being seen as valuable, but it's just less time spent on it. And then you have some studios that are going to go really extremely into the ballet and the theater and those types of genres, and their students may never take jazz or hip hop. But yeah, so you kind of have to see what you care about style wise, and learn the style of your studios that you're looking at. Jazz is not a one size fits all. There's a lot of different things that are called jazz.
Lots of
You need to do
styles.
your homework on that, and what's important to you. And I recommend looking at studio offerings on their website, but also if you can go and watch one of their shows and their performances, you will learn so much about who they are and their style just by watching one of their performances. So, yeah, that's one. Those are some things. Another is some studios have a much more robust offerings and very organized, structured for the little bitty ones. So your preschoolers, early elementary kids. Some studios have a very structured approach to that, and some have a more relaxed approach. And so if you do have very small children, I would say there's a chance your kid may want to do it past the small child age. So definitely also look at what's going on beyond age 7 in that studio. But, some people are gonna want a more relaxed approach in with their little bitty ones instead of a real structured one, and some are gonna want organization and to be impressed by a high level of structure. So that's just different for every person, so it's worth looking at.
Yeah. So also, if you have an older kid that is jumping into dance for the first time, and we'll say older, meaning like upper elementary school or middle school, just starting dance, some studios are going to have a wider age range for beginners. So they may have multiple paths in their class offerings, something that is specifically geared for kids in that same stage that are starting a little bit later versus jumping right in with kids who have been dancing when they were really little, just having those different tracks based on experience. And then other studios are going to be more geared towards training them up really strong when they're young and having them be pretty advanced dancers by their 10 or 11 years old. And then those same studios often have pathways for teenagers who are wanting to continue to dance all throughout high school, and they continue to build on experiences and more advanced trainings for those teenagers, while others focus more on prepping them and launching them out into something else, whether that is they focus a lot on twirling and their teenagers eventually are trying out to be majorettes at their high school, and then that's the path that they take. Or same thing goes for theater. If they need to know Broadway style dance because they've had a lot of theater training, but they need to know the dance version of that. And then that's helping them get parts in their school's theater program or even cheer and things like that. So it just sort of depends on the studio and what their focus is and knowing what the right fit is for where your kid falls on that spectrum where you live.
Right, and it can be kinda hard to know, like, what your kid's gonna do later on. We recognize that this can be really tricky. Also, just some practical things to think through is price points are often different at different studios, so that's something to factor in. That might be an important thing for your family to think through. Their production levels are gonna be different. Again, if you go and attend one of their performances, you'll be able to see this right off the bat of what kind of things they're producing and they're putting out there, and it'll show you, like, a lot about who they are. They have different communication styles and how they communicate with the community and with parents and with their students, and that's something that might take a little bit more digging to know about. Often asking other parents that are at that studio can give you some insight into that. They're gonna have different requirements of parents and expectations. Like, some studios have whole teams of parents that put props together
Prop dads.
or work on costumes, and some prefer that parents keep a bit of a distance and trust their staff to handle all of those kinds of things. And so exploring those different approaches is valuable. They have different requirements for their competitive dancers as well. This is one thing that I see probably the widest range of difference in between the studios in our area is what kind of commitment level equals being on the competition team.
Mhm.
That is widely different at different studios, and it's kind of funny because I just for an example, we have a friend, they have a child who danced with my youngest one. We were friends in another context, and they came and wanted to take some dance classes with my youngest when they were very little. So this little girl was dancing with my youngest and was kind of going through that thing of like not being fully cooperative every time, and the parent had decided like this might be a little too much too fast because we have a pretty structured program for young kids at our dance studio, and it felt a little bit too structured for them, and so they pulled away for a little bit and then plugged in at another dance studio that was more relaxed at the young age. But what's been interesting is now that our kids are 8 years old, it has sort of the tables have turned, and the expectations for minis where we are is much less than what the expectations for juniors, teens, and seniors at our studio is. There's a little bit more of a pathway into deeper and deeper on the competition team. Whereas they are at a smaller studio where the competition team is the competition team. So everybody does the same thing.
So the 8-year-olds are doing as much as the 18-year-olds.
Exactly. And so while our studio was a lot more, quote, intense for little bitties, it changed by the time their child was 7, 8 years old. And so those are things that would be hard to know without doing a little bit of digging and finding out a little bit more for sure.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how we landed where we did. This does not mean that this is the right way to approach it or that we did any of these things that we are about to talk about, but how we ended up where we currently are, and it managed to work out great. We're happy, very happy with our studio, but my oldest was 3 when she started dancing, and it started as just a little summer ballet class, but we ended up at that studio because, well, Beth, I knew you and your girls were there, so you had spoken, really favorably of this place. We
Really,
had
I couldn't remember if we ever talked about dance.
We did a little bit. I think I remember you coming over and bringing food when my youngest daughter was born, and we were just sort of chit-chatting about stuff, and I mentioned that my older daughter had kind of wanted to start dance. She had been asking about it a little bit or, saying she wanted to be a ballerina, and you said, "Oh, I love our studio. It's so great." And you kinda told me a
Okay.
little about it. But we had several other friends that I knew from church who had slightly older kids who danced there. Also, when I was a classroom teacher many years before I had kids, I taught some first and second grade girls who I just adored, who were very involved at the studio that we are at now. And I knew that they were super talented kids and just very kind and well rounded as well. And I knew they were spending a lot of time at the studio. So I knew that they were being shaped there into their who they were, in addition to just them having great parents and things like that. So that was just, I had a good interaction with dancers from there. I knew other people had said that our studio had a really good reputation for having excellent technique. And so I've always been of the mindset that if you're going to do something, you might as well do it well. So it made sense, even at 3, to, if dance wasn't the thing that stuck or we were just dabbling in it, it was good to go to the place that was going to give quality instruction. And I had just seen their dancers at events around town. I know there's like a doctor's office here that does a big back to school thing in the parking lot. They would have inflatables and face painting, and it's right beside where our dance studio is. And so when my oldest was very little, we had gone to that event just as something to do. And they had the dancers in their beautiful pancake tutus and we're all sparkly. And those older girls were just so sweet and so kind to her when they were, painting a ballerina on her face or something. So I just had these interactions with dancers who had come out of that studio. So I just had a feeling based on my interactions with everyone and talking to other parents that it was a great place to be. So that's the only place that we ever were, and it worked out in my favor. Not that I did any of this research. I just sort of lucked
Right.
into it, which thank goodness now that we're this involved. What about you?
When I taught school, I had occasionally students who would take dance, and I had one student who just really stood out to me. This was like a 5th grade kid, right? But I remember when we did our Christmas program, she got chosen to do a little featured part that was basically a little lyrical dance thing in our school Christmas program. And I saw that she just was a beautiful little dancer in the way she carried herself. And she had also just the character. Like she was humble, she was like confident, but wasn't one to brag, like that. And even like when people were congratulating her on her dance performance, the way she handled it was just so mature for a 10-year-old. And so I just remembered that and took note of it and knew where she danced. And at that time it was a newer studio in our area.
Mhm,
So it was not the prominent one that most people went to necessarily. But later, when my daughter was born, that former student of mine at that point was in high school, and her mom actually worked with me, so I was still connected with them. And so I was just kind of asking, like, is she still there at that studio? And oh, yeah, she actually assists with classes. So that was a big part of it for us. And I learned though, because my daughter has a winter birthday. So I thought, you start dance when you're 3 kind of thing. But that landed like mid year for us.
mhm,
And so I was thinking like after Christmas kind of thing, but our studio at that time, which again, so much has evolved. They have a program for little 18 months and 2-year-olds, but they didn't at that time. But I really wanted her to do dance because I had taken dance. So it was, I wanted my little girl to do that. And we couldn't start until August, and we could have gone to another studio. Like, we could have tried some other studios that did younger ones, but because I knew that student and really trusted her, and also there were a lot of the kids at our church who were dancing, and they were dancing at our current studio as well, and just I respected their parents and their parents' choices, and very similar to you, I had kinda scoped out their social media and saw that they really cared about community service and giving back and using your talent for good, all those kinds of things that were really important to me. And I even like looking at their social media, I could tell from their photos that their technique was good.
mhm.
And as a former dancer, you can tell the difference. Like, I'm sure this is true for any athlete as well, sport. Like, you can even look at their pictures and just tell like what the technique level is. So that is a good pointer for if you are creating social media accounts to do
Be
that well.
choosy about your
Be choosy
pictures.
about your pictures, yes, for sure. So, anyway, I knew technique was good, and we wanted to go there, but she couldn't start, so we ended up actually going to the Parks and Rec program
Oh, I
for,
forgot
like,
about
6
that.
months. We just took a little very casual dance. It was like a combo ballet and acro class at the local Parks and Rec department, just so she could do something
Mhm. A
until
good way to tiptoe in.
so we could start in the fall, but, like, it was important enough to me to go to the studio I wanted to be at that I was willing to wait till she was old enough. So
Mhm.
there's something to be
That's
said.
good.
There's something to be said about that. Not everybody would make that choice, but to me it was important, so but all this being said, we wanna talk a little bit about actually maybe what you should do when you're choosing a studio and not just stick to what we did because we did not know what we were doing. So, bottom line, first thing I want us to just kind of make clear, there is no perfect studio or team. There just isn't. You are not going to find it no matter how hard you look. And just like, I mean, I work for a church and we say this all the time too. There's no perfect church. There's no perfect school or any other organization because these places are being made up by and run by humans who are imperfect. So, one thing that you love about a studio may not be lasting. And there are factors that we sometimes can use when we're trying to choose that are actually unsustainable. I've found I read this in a book one time when you're, shopping for an organization to align yourself with and to join, that we sometimes can take a fast food approach. So you think about like when you're getting fast food, you're not really thinking about your overall health and
You just need
wellness
something.
and like long-term sustainability. You just want what you're craving right in that moment and what can get to you quickly. And so the factors that sometimes we can use when we're looking at that kind of stuff would be the place, like the location of it. Is this in a spot that's convenient to my house, to what we do during the week? Is the parking lot easy to get in and out of? All those kinds of things.
Is it near whatever other activities your older kids might be doing? I know that that has been a factor in people that I know too.
Yes, yes. And so, like, picking a place and a location matters in the immediate. And when you're thinking, like, we're about to do one class a week for 1 hour, that feels like you want it to fit into your life, and that does matter. But the reality is, the longer you're invested and the deeper you become invested, the less important that's going to be. So you got to kind of sift through your threshold for this. And unless you're like, I'm moving out of town in 6 months and this is not going to be in our life forever. But if there's any chance that this could become a long term thing, is driving 20 minutes instead of 10 minutes worth it to get the quality of what you're looking for? Those are things to think about. Now there's a threshold there. Like, I definitely was not going to drive my 3-year-old 2 hours. So just because I know about an amazing place that's 2 hours away doesn't mean we're going to do that. So we have to come up with like what's our threshold level for that. So anything that you want to add for that, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I know that when kids are little, you are just doing the best you can to get places on time, period. And so that can be a really attractive thing. Oh, it's right down the street from my house, but that should be something that lands lower on your priority list versus all these other things that we're going to mention here in a minute.
Sure, I'd say so. Another fast food kind of thing would be, and this one's kind of touchy, but would be the people who are there. Like, you might have a friend, and honestly, we both used this as a factor. Like, for me, the people from our church that were at that studio, like, I knew people who were there.
And I don't think this has to be a deal breaker.
No, no, don't like not go there because of that. But if you're only doing it because that's all you know, because that's where you've just heard, or like you have a best friend that goes there and you just really want to be with them at the expense of looking at other factors, like, I think it might not be sustainable because those friends might not stay. They might not be there long term. And the culture will change. Even like we talked about this before, like if you're with a friend, that doesn't mean your kid is always going to be dancing with that friend or have the same schedule. You may never even see them at the studio once they start progressing into different levels. So I would say that's a fast food. It's not a non-reason to do it, but
It can't be the
it can't
reason
be
to do.
the reason if you plan to do this long term. Yeah. Another one is just programs, like the offerings. Like, if you're attached to a certain class, it could go away if whoever's teaching that moves out of town.
Especially if it's a really specialty type of dance like tap, for example. Not
Sure.
everybody can teach that at an advanced level.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's just like a lot of different things that can come and go from a program standpoint.
Like any business is going to adapt to the times and to their clientele, a dance studio is no different.
And it's hard to like not do that. Like, you're like, okay, I like this product, and that's great and that's fine. You can't put your stock in that being there forever, kind of deal. And then the last one would be a personality. If there is one leader or influencer in that place, one person that you are following into this context, it could change. Leaders of organizations do change. And so if you are making a choice to be aligned with this organization, to join this studio, to join this team because of who the coach is, the owner is, the leader is, just know that that could change. And you have to decide if it's worth it to take that step for that season in time when and know that like you might not feel as connected to the organization when that leader is not a part of it. But a more sustainable approach would be to look at the vision and the values of the studio or team. And hopefully, all those other factors are going to align with that too. Like the leader, the place, the people, the programs are going to feed the vision and values of it, which will supersede all those other little things that could change over time.
I'm thinking of that saying, "The only constant is change." So
Mhm.
just not putting all your eggs into the basket of something that is variable, like all of
Absolutely.
those things. So a really easy thought path to go down is that you may think, "Oh, my kid is really young. I can just go to this one place in the short term, and if it isn't a good fit later, I can always just switch." And that's true. You could do that. But typically, when you're making a change like that, it takes several years to really settle into a new team in the way that you would if you had just stayed somewhere and done your research from the beginning. It will take several years to develop relationships, not only with other dancers or other kids on that team, but with the teachers and the leadership. I mean, it takes being involved to a certain level for them to really know you. If your kid is only going to one 45-minute long class a week, early on, those teachers are teaching hundreds of kids. They're not necessarily going to know your kid really well or really deeply right off the bat. But if you get 2 to 3 years in and they do know you and you decide that that studio or team is not meeting your needs anymore and you go somewhere else, then you're starting over at square one. And
Mhm.
you're going to have to put in that time again when your kid is a little bit older for them to really know you and them to feel like they belong.
Sure. And I've watched this happen a bunch of times. I mean, we're getting new students at our studio all the time from other places, and it just takes a little while to get settled in. And sometimes they have been very well known and featured and all kinds of things in the other contexts they've been in. And they're walking into a new place where, like, by no fault of anyone, other students are just more known.
Mhm.
And so it takes time, and sometimes it's worth it to make those kinds of changes because you see like a very significant reason why that needs to happen. And there's so many reasons why that could be the case. But it requires a transition period. And so to try and avoid having to do that, doing your research on the front end can prevent some of that, knowing like more of a long term pathway before you make a choice, even if you're not in real deep yet.
So let's talk about let's talk about the opposite of these fast food reasons people would choose a studio or team. So let's talk about some sustainable reasons. Beth, you had kind of touched on aligning with the vision and values of that organization. And the owner of that studio, they have the right to define what their vision and values are for that studio. It is their business.
Sure.
They can do whatever they want. But knowing that going into it is a good reason to join a certain team or studio.
Sure. Like it's just disrespectful and unrealistic to come in thinking you're gonna immediately change everything though.
Right.
Like if you come in with this list of things that you already are like, well, I like these things about you guys, but I don't like these things.
Your
So
list of
are
demands.
these negotiable? It's just not very fair to the already established program. And so being willing to submit to the leadership of that is is really important. And again, there's no perfect studio. So chances are there's going to be at least something that's not the way that you would do it. I mean, we both have those things about our studio, just like people have those things about the places that we work and we lead. It is very normal, but the owner, director, whoever's in charge sees things that we don't see. and they have to hold a lot of pieces and parts together. And so being respectful of what they've established and being willing to like be shaped by that, to learn it and to go along with that is really important. And if you don't feel like it's aligned well enough, then it's probably not the place to be.
And that's why it's so important going in from the get-go is to get to know the people who are leading that program and make sure that they are people that you trust so that when you do encounter these things, you're able to trust their decision making when it's something that you don't necessarily agree with fully, trusting that they are making the right choice for your kid and for the team as a whole. It's a lot easier to do that when you know and respect the person in charge.
Absolutely. And this doesn't mean we have to be blind puppets. I mean, I would imagine this is true anywhere you go, that you can opt in and out of a lot of things. And so I would just explore what are things that to be here, this is required or this is expected of everyone versus things that you might choose to just opt in at a limited level on and not go beyond the surface on or beyond a certain threshold on. I would say in any organization there are going to be different tiers of commitment. No, what that is and what the typical pathway for it is going to vary from place to place. And so there will be some studios that are going to have a very fast-paced pathway that everybody it's like okay, one step in, then a much deeper step, then a much deeper step, then a much deeper step. And then others that you can kind of ride out from a surface level for a long, long time and be happy and healthy and connected and belong and all those kinds of things. And so finding that balance. Now, I will say what I've seen is for very talented athletes and artists, often there is a hunger for some deep connection and some deep commitment. And so they're going to want to be somewhere that there is a kind of elite pathway, per se. There is an opportunity for them to go in deep and to be with other people who are committed at that level.
Because it's frustrating to them when they feel like they are with people who are not committed.
Right. But I do know that a lot of studios, ours actually doesn't have this, but a lot of studios have different levels of competition team that are like different commitment levels. So if you have that as an option in your area and you want the less committed pathway, that's a great thing to look into.
A good starting point so that you know if your kid really does have the desire to do something on this deep of a level. It's great to start at that less commitment early on and see how that fits into your life before you take the plunge into something that involves a lot of time and energy.
Yeah, and it helps with that, and it also helps with you taking time to feel out if you trust these people, like we were
Yes.
saying before. And we've shared our story that we did a version of that. We didn't do it within the competition team. We did it within classes of like seeing who's speaking into my kids and what are they saying and that whole deal. So yeah, so as we kind of look at what we do care about instead of those like fast food type things, I've seen dance studios in particular, and I think this is true of other sports activities as well. We kind of swing in a pendulum where we can go more into the value of excellent talent or performance versus like nurturing of hearts and making everybody feel special and included, that kind of thing. And some can go really far one way at the expense of the other. And I think for us, when we chose our studio, really all those other factors I was naming, it had to do with like, I felt like the studio that we chose had the balance that I wanted of those things.
And I think you have to dig deeper to really know if that is what's happening somewhere, especially if you're in a place where there's lots of options. It's easy for different places to kind of have reputations for things. I mean, I know that my daughter in middle school, someone made another girl made a comment to her one time who is her friend. Like this was not meant to be mean in any way, but she dances at another studio and she told my daughter, "Oh, your studio is the one for people who wanna be professional dancers, and my studio is the one for people who wanna have fun. And she was
Your
kinda
daughter's
like,
like, "We have
"We
fun?"
have fun. What are you talking about?" So this is one of those things, like, knowing the nurturing that takes place there, you are gonna have to peel back some layers and dig in there beyond what you see surface level or even beyond what that place's, baseline reputation may be around to find out what is actually going on.
Absolutely. We had, actually, I weirdly got connected with a mom who has a daughter that's friends with your younger one, but they have another child that knows my youngest. They don't dance, and daughter that's friends with your younger one was interested in trying out dance, but just assumed that there would be no place at our studio because she had not started when she was young. And when I started describing, like, which classes she would likely be placed in, she was like, "Oh, really? What?" Well, long story short, that kid is, like, there 3 days a week
Loving
now,
it,
and,
thriving.
like, it is only, like, a year later, and she stepped in, took 1 class, I think, last
Yep,
year, and was a little timid and just stepped in a little more and more, and now even she's got, like, a special featured part in the Nutcracker, and
yeah,
it's just, like, a cool thing, and I think she just made an assumption that because of reputation,
yes.
that wasn't real, and so, yeah, there's some truth to that, but, yeah. So I kind of use a set of filters when I'm exploring, like, a place that we're gonna plant ourselves and we're gonna spend time because these are just things that we need in our life. We need a place that we can develop a sense of our identity, that we can find belonging, and that we can find purpose.
And we are gonna find those things somewhere,
Right.
whether it is somewhere healthy or not. Everyone is going to seek that out.
Absolutely. And so it might be that your sense of identity, belonging, purpose, you're not actually going to find all three of those from this team that you're joining or committing to because it might be that this is a small part of your life and that's coming from another place. But if you're going to spend a lot of time and energy in this place, then you want those three things to be present. And so I think for identity, I'm asking myself when I'm looking at like, is this the right place for us? I'm asking, like, what are the truths that are being spoken into my kids in this place? Like what are things being said to them that are forming what they think is right and true and real in their life? And are those things that they come home saying and repeating about themselves or about what's important? Do those match what we want our families' truths to be? Like I think that's something to really consider. I think asking what is most important to this team, they have to make a lot of choices about what to say yes and what to say no to every single day. And so whoever is in charge at this place, their personality is going to shape that a little bit.
Mm.
The things that they value and that are important to them are going to shape the choices about what to do and not to do and allow and not to allow and say yes to and say no to. And so, like, I kind of started going through like a list of like, what are some of those things? And so you can kind of think through like, which of these are the most important to me versus less important to me? And if I look at our dance studio, at our soccer team, at our whatever place that we're trying to explore, which ones are they for those? So some of these kinds of things. So like in some places, the most important thing is that everything is right and fair and systematic. So that can be a thing. Another that like we are caring towards others. Like these are all good things and important. Another being excellent and being impressive, exploring creativity, like lots of outside the box kinds of things. Maybe developing knowledge and expertise and maybe like there's like a niche really specific area that they're really good at. Safety, security, you know, those kinds of things can win over others in times. Fun, like some places are just all about fun, like that's the most important thing to them. Winning can be really important. to some, and you'll be able to see that, especially in this realm. Some teams are going to value winning over other things, and some that is much less important too, even though it's labeled as competitive. And then finally, like the idea of like including everyone and making space for like all the options, all the pathways, all the different things. So those are all different like choices that could be made about what to lean into the most, and I bet you could kind of see a number of those in any team or context. But sometimes when two of those are at odds with each other, a choice has to be made. And so knowing which one this team is going to default to would be helpful. And that might take actually having a conversation with whoever's in charge. Like if one of these things I've said is like really really important to you above all else, then it might be worthwhile to actually ask where that ranks in their values.
And I think that's great advice. People are so it's easy to be concerned about offending someone or feeling like you're being pushy or stepping on their toes. There is no harm in just stating what is important to you and which of those values you hold the highest and finding out if that aligns with the person in the leadership position of that team.
Sure. I feel like every time I've seen a disconnect with parents and kids on our team that are like frustrated with things not going how they want, it comes down to that. It comes down to like, I wanted to win, but we didn't win. Or I really wanted everybody to get included, but some people got put in this other group. Or I really wanted, fill in the blank. Like, one of these things didn't get met at the expense of another, and it just created frustration.
This is even something that we talked about way back when my husband and I were in like our premarital counseling before we got married, that the number one reason that people get upset with each other is because of unmet expectations. And if they're unspoken, if the other person doesn't know what your expectation is and then they don't meet it and then you get mad at them for that, there's a level of unfairness. This is the same version of that.
Absolutely. Yes. Everybody needs to be clear and on the same page about what we're going for here and what the point is.
Yes. So belonging is another really important piece of this puzzle and knowing if this studio or team is a good fit for you. So everybody wants to belong. Kids, adults, everyone wants to have a place where they feel like they are surrounded by people who know them deeply and love and care about them deeply, even in some of the icky things. So it's important to know, like, is there a place for my kid here at this
Mhm.
studio? That does not mean that they have to be invited to everything that happens or that they have to be included in every single social activity that happens outside of the studio.
Or every select studio thing.
Yes, someone else.
Sometimes they have to only pick 3 dancers for something. That's just reality. And there's a lot more than 3 dancers. And just
Right.
cuz your kid didn't get picked doesn't mean they don't belong here.
Or that they are not valued.
Right, right, right.
But are there people at this place or on this team that they resonate with?
Mhm.
People that they connect with and they know care about them? Are there pathways for your kid to become increasingly connected?
Mhm.
So if they're starting younger and as they're progressing through this program, essentially, I mean, that's what it is. Are there still pathways for them to get to know people and be known? I mean, I know when they're really little, at our studio at least, there are so many teeny tiny dancers. And that just sort of funnels out as, as they get a little bit older and their interests change and they kind of peel off to do other things. It's easy for them to just be like one of many when they're little. But as they get older, are they being increasingly known?
Mhm.
Because they are changing too as people, of course. I mean, my kid is not the same person at 13 as she was at 10 or 8 or 6 or any of these other ages that she was. But along this way, the more involved she's gotten, there have always been people, students and teachers that know her. Um, and are they going to hit a roadblock? Is there going to be a point where they're just sort of held back?
Sure, that's kind of what happened to me as a dancer. I think I've shared this before, but that had friends and a pathway, and I had certain people I was dancing with, but because my family wasn't gonna opt into the competition team,
You were stuck.
I got stuck, and those people stayed together, and there wasn't a place for me. This is actually what happened with my oldest child with gymnastics as well. And when we made the shift over to dance, I was actually willing, because dance wasn't as time consuming, to let her take like one gymnastics class, but she had advanced to such a level that it was like team or nothing. Like there was no recreational version that could do the skills that she could.
And all
So
those other girls were moving on together without her.
right, like, there wasn't a place for her to belong with what she was doing, and so that's the kinda thing we're talking about here, is, like, with who personality your kid is, and also the pathway that they're on, is there a place for them?
And your connection cannot just be one person at that
No.
studio, because if that person leaves, you have to still have relationship and connection there. There can't be just one really intense tie to a certain teacher or
Or
friend
student,
who
yes.
is there, that if their life circumstances were to change and they were to leave, is that totally going to blow up your kids' experience to where they feel like they don't have anyone there anymore? Also, your purpose. Why are you here? Why are we doing this? And does this particular place serve the purpose? So maybe your reason is that you can see that your kid is really talented and you want them to have excellent skill and excellent techniques. But is that your number one purpose? Is your purpose because you want your child to branch out and interact socially with some other peers? Maybe they're not getting a lot of that at school, or if they're little and they're not in school yet and you just want them to have an activity where they're meeting other kids. Is that your number one purpose? Is it because you want them to learn to be part of a team and what that looks like to have people counting on you and to depend on other people? Maybe you want them to have an opportunity to experience some challenges and to develop some grit and resilience, facing some setbacks and setting goals for themselves, something to work towards. Maybe there is a certain other thing that you're trying to prepare for. If you're maybe your dancer really wants to be on a college dance team, and so they need to be somewhere where they're developing these skills so that they're prepared to audition for that. Maybe they want to be on Broadway and they have, you're getting training in vocal technique and acting, but you need a dance component to that. Maybe that's your purpose there. Maybe they love ballet and they've dreamed of being in a professional ballet company one day, or an industry dancer. Maybe even they want to be a dance teacher and own their own dance studio one day. Or it can even be a goal that's sooner, like they want to make the high school cheer team. So they need to learn some tumbling techniques, or show choir, even. They can sing great,
The
but
stage presence
stage,
stuff is big
yes,
for that.
performance, pageants. There's a
Mhm.
lot of overlap where we live in girls who do the pageant circuit, because there are great college scholarship opportunities there, and dance is something that really provides them a well-rounded talent that they can
Right.
use in these
You
things.
have to have a talent.
Yes. So, yeah, just like this translates into other things. Like if you are wanting to make the high school baseball team, you are not going to make the high school baseball team if you have never been on a travel baseball team. I
At
mean,
least
at
here.
least here it is so competitive. You're not
And
just going to be like, I like baseball and show up for tryouts and make the team. Your another goal could be that you just want your kid to be a well-rounded individual who has a hobby. That was like, I think I mentioned earlier that I was a dabbler in things. I never did any one thing for very long, but my parents had a rule that I had to have an extracurricular because this was their goal for me. Their purpose was they wanted me to be a well-rounded person, and I had to have a hobby. Nothing I ever did was at a super competitive level or took up all my time, and I ping-ponged around based on as my interests changed. But if that's your kid, do you need to know if the studio has a team that offers a less intense or a milder version of this that allows you to do other things if you're not looking for something to take up all of your time?
also, like, part of the purpose thing is, like, not just does this place meet the purpose that I'm looking for, but also, like, does it help me explore different purposes that I may not even know about yet? I think sometimes kids have no idea what they wanna do with their life, and so if if there are opportunities for them to try things that they haven't even thought about trying and to just spend some time with, experts in that field or someone at least trained that can show them that world.
It's funny that we're bringing this up because just in the last week, I've sort of seen this a little bit with my oldest one, in that their studio has recently started an adaptive ballet class for older students who have special needs, and they're kind of buddying up some of the older dancers with those girls. And my daughter, over the last year or so, when she was in seventh grade, their school had a program where they could be a buddy for a special needs kid. And she just has found so much joy in working with special needs kids that are her age. I was like, always thinking like, oh no, don't be a teacher. It's such a hard job. But like I sort of see this vision of her
Very cool.
maybe even as a special ed teacher one day, which I don't
Yes.
know that she ever would have thought of or
Mhm.
considered that as something to do, but it's just sort of like meshing these two things that she really loves. And it has been such a cool thing to hear her talk about.
Yes, and just having that opportunity to get experience doing that in a context that you never would have thought led to that
Right.
pathway. Just so cool. Yes, absolutely. Okay, and then finally, like, having a purpose, kind of what it can look like is that asking yourself, will it be noticeable if my child isn't here? And I think if it is, it means they have a purpose. Because like if they were to not be there and something has to be replaced, it means they matter to what they're doing. And if they don't feel like that's true, then they probably haven't found a purpose in this place yet. That's yet being the key word. That doesn't mean it won't ever happen, but it's worth thinking about. Like, is there something for my child brings to this place and that they are part of something?
Okay, so you may be thinking, this is all great, Beth and Sarah, but how on earth do I find out if this team or studio is or does any of these things that you've talked about? So I think one really great place to start is to look to other parents who have older kids that are in your circle, whether that
Mhm.
is friends that you work with, mutual friends. Who do you know that is already involved with this team to some degree that you trust and you can ask about the real nitty-gritty of it? What is the overall dynamic of this team? Is it a relatively peaceful place? Is this a welcoming community? Do they trust the people who are in charge? Getting another parent's perspective, I think, is one of the only things of all the things we talked about that I did before finding our studio.
And if your friend is prone to sensitivity towards drama or propensity towards drama,
Don't ask that
then
friend.
they're going to speak to those kinds of things. So you need to find someone who kind of sees the world the way you do to ask about this.
Yes, and who holds the same values for their family as you do for yours, or at least similar ones. And then we've mentioned this already, but reach out to that studio or coach, the director, and ask questions.
Mhm.
Um, think about it like a job interview. I mean, there is a real possibility that you are about to spend substantial time and money with this place, and there is nothing wrong with asking questions that you have in a respectful way, of course, but interviewing them, so to speak, to find out if that's a good fit. And then ask if you can take some trial classes. If this is not a place that you're plugged into quite yet, but you're also not ready to take the plunge and sign on for a whole season necessarily. I know most dance studios will allow you to take a trial class at any age for the most part, and just come in and see how the fit is and how, I mean, we have encountered this with friends we've had that were moving and their kids were very talented dancers and were trying to find a new studio, and they were able to just go and take some trial classes and see how they liked the instructors, how they got along with the other students. I think any studio would be okay with that. Okay, so that's about it for all of the things we felt we needed to talk about with this episode. So we're going to end it the way that we always do. If it's not really about dance, Beth, what is it about for you this week?
So this one is slightly dance adjacent. So maybe it is a little bit about dance, but it's, not the technique of the dance. And it is that we are living full into Nutcracker season right now. And we are spending a lot of time getting ready for this. And I have two dancers this year that in the same show are going to be wearing rag curls. If you do not know the world of the rag curls,
For the elusive rag
it's these
curl.
Victorian like corkscrew curls. If you've ever seen the Nutcracker, the little girls on the stage just look beautiful and they're bouncy. And every time I see it, I think that was like 2 to 3 hours of some mom's life right there.
I hope Victorian moms did not actually do their daughter's hair like this every day.
Right. I guess maybe they did. I think they did a lot of, like, overnight sleeping in it,
Yeah.
and they probably had a lot more time to sit around and prepare it
They were
because
not working full-time jobs.
or running people to all the activities like we're doing, but because my oldest daughter has performed with rag curls a few times and has kind of aged out of the roles that has, but my younger 2 are both doing rag curls for the first time this year, all at once. And so we are about to, I think next weekend, sit down and this is what I like to do when we prepare for rag curls. I did this with my oldest is we do a trial run by picking a Christmas movie
Love it.
because, in early November, that's what you do. You pick a Christmas movie and we just sit and we watch a Christmas movie together and we do hair and test it out and have a little run through and look at it and take pictures and send them to the studio for approval. We'll see if I think they kind of probably trust me now because I've done it a few times with my older one that we definitely sent for approval with the first one.
This feels like ultimate challenge. Like, you passed
So
for
now I
the
have to do
one, now you get
two.
to do it 2 times for
Right.
one show.
This is how it goes in the dance world. If you pass the test, you get a harder test the next time. But it's a huge honor. It's a lot of fun. And like I know I will have so many memories. Like there will be a day when my kids are grown and flown that I'm gonna wish I could sit in November and watch a Christmas movie and practice rag curls. So
Love it.
so yeah, that's what we're doing. How about for you? What's it really about for you right now?
Okay, well, have you ever seen that meme that went around the internet a few years ago that was talking about like dress up weeks at an elementary school? And it was like Tuesday, design and build a regulation style Macy's Thanksgiving
Yes.
Day float.
Yes.
Wednesday, bring your virus to school day.
That's this week at your school.
That is what this week feels
because
like.
my youngest attends your school.
Yes, we have all the dress up days coming up because this upcoming week is the week of Halloween. This will be well past that by the time you're listening to this episode,
See,
probably.
you're hearing our secrets right now of when
Yes.
we're recording things.
But we are having to figure out what we're going to wear because I am not buying something for every single dress up day. I am of the mindset that we have to dig through our box of treasures and figure it out. But this year they have changed up what all the days were. So all of the things I have been prepared for are different. And then also at the dance studio, they are allowed to dress up in costume
Yes.
every day as well. But they always are pretty funny about the girls sort of coordinate and figure out a theme that their whole class will do. And they share and they borrow and they come up with all sorts of crazy stuff because they still have to be able to dance and whatever it is. It's not like we're just throwing on something from the costume bucket anymore.
No, they like plan intricately what their stuff is going to be.
Last year, I think our older girls, like their entire class was a character from Toy Story or
It
something.
was so cute.
It's so cute, but it inevitably turns into someone asking me at 9 p.m. to like go to Walmart and buy some random costume accessory that they need. They need because they have to dress up as whoever the next day.
It always cracks me up when they just tell me who they're going to be and there's no plan for the costume at all.
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't come up with this.
Yeah, we
This
don't
is
have
not
anything
on
for
me.
that. Yeah. So that's my week coming up. I'm
Love
just
it.
like mentally preparing for whatever random costume accessory requests are going to come my way.
I think that's in my world too. It wasn't pressing on my mind. So thank you for bringing that into my world.
You're welcome. Add that to your rag curls.
Right, sure.
Well, make sure that you are following us on Instagram if you are not already. We are there at Not Really About Dance. And subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And if you're liking what you're hearing, please be sure to share this with your fellow competitive dance friends or competitive sport parents in general. We would love and appreciate that. Next time, we are going to be talking competitive dance 101. This will be lingo specific to this world. I felt like I was learning a new language for a little while there, but all the things you need to know if you are new to competitive dance. So we hope you have a great week. Bye.
Bye.